Tuning in with KrASIA, bringing human stories to life. This is Tuning In with KrASIA. I'm Emily Fang, your host for this episode. By day, Sabrina Ooi helps brands in the APAC region optimize their digital customer experience as a customer success manager. In the evenings and weekends, she's a DJ at some of Singapore's coolest venues. She is also the co-founder of Calm Collective Asia, a community for good mental health. They've built a space to share practical and actionable strategies for better mental well-being. We get to chat intimately about her own personal experience with mental health and how she's changing the stigma in Asia. Hey Sabrina, how are you? Thanks for being here today.
Hello, how are you? Yeah, I'm great. Well, it was initially busy, but now I'm happy to be here.
Yeah, good. I'm glad to hear that. I have a funny story actually. So I'm part of CMX Hub. So we had a speaker named Kevon, who's the founder of Toasty. And he recommended you as a speaker for tuning in. And he said that you DJ'd for his wedding. Is that right?
Yeah, I did that last October. It was super fun. I was actually up there for a work trip as well.
Oh,
and he actually had invited me first, and then the work trip happened, and everything, just happened all at once. Yeah, it was super fun. And I remember on the way to his wedding, I was actually stuck in the, the black shirt riots and everything.
Oh.
Yeah, so it was during that time.
Oh,
yeah,
wow.
Yeah. So I was like, oh my God, I have to DJ.
You're like, I need a DJ. It's like kind of high
I need to
pressure.
be there for my sound test.
Yeah.
Check, before the banquet and everything.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Oh wow. Well, yeah, I'm pretty sure everything worked out, and because he said it was a success, so that's awesome.
Yes, it was. It was really fun.
Awesome. I love that. I feel like at Tuning In, we find people who have different dimensions. So, you're a DJ, you also work in tech and customer success, and then you're also a co-founder of a mental health community platform. And so I think what you're doing is great, and I'm so happy that you're here on this show with us. So I'm curious to know, at what point did you realize there was a need to begin this grassroots community? When did you realize there's something lacking in terms of mental health support in Singapore or in Asia?
So I started this community that's called Calm Collective Asia. And we started this during the circuit breaker period, or like the lockdown in Singapore, right? This was back in April. And the trigger for all of this was actually the fact that mental health services were actually considered as non-essential during that time. So, if you have to go see a therapist or go see your psychiatrist and maybe get medication for that and all of that, that was considered non-essential. You had to stay home. You should actually go postpone your appointments and, do your part to stay home to save everyone from COVID, right? So I was a bit upset because personally, I've gone through my own mental health journey. I'm still seeing a therapist and psychiatrist regularly. And, while I'm in a much better state than I was, 4 years ago, it really got me thinking about the people who really, really need that help when they're in critical need, especially since it's such a stressful time for all of us right now.
Yeah.
So that was like the motivation or the catalyst for everything. So we started with the idea of having a virtual summit at the start of May to have just a series of webinars to get speakers to, share useful strategies to help people cope better mentally with COVID-19 stress. So that was what it was supposed to be, just a one-off summit. But then we had really good response for that one. And then my co-founders and I were really motivated to just continue and keep hosting talks for people. And we've just grown since then. It's been about 5.5 months now since we started.
Oh, wow. Yeah, I think I was looking at your website and I was like, I feel like this community has been around for years. It's been so developed. You guys have great speakers. I think it's awesome. And I think the point that you brought up about these services not being essential during this time, even for me being at home cooped up, I went through a period too. I was I feel so isolated. I have no one to talk to. And I just think that's kind of almost insane that it wouldn't be considered essential. I guess to kind of follow up on that as well, to open up the conversation. For me, I came to Singapore in January, so I don't know much about the mental health space in Asia in particular. How would you kind of describe what people perceive or think about mental health here? And is there a stigma around it? Are people afraid to speak about it?
Yeah, definitely. So one of the reasons why we called ourselves Calm Collective Asia and not, without the Asia, is because we really wanted to address the stigma that exists in the not just Asian community, but specifically geographically, like in this part of the world. We felt that it's pretty different compared to how mental health is being addressed in, say, the States or in Europe. So, in the society, or bringing it to like Singapore's context, there's still pretty big stigma simply because people don't have the understanding or education about what mental health or mental illness is. And therefore, when someone has like a mental illness, they're like, oh, automatically, okay, that person is crazy. Let's not talk to them. Maybe voices in their head, they can't work for you. They're not in the right state of mind. They can't do all these things. Maybe they're not dateable as well, Yeah. And that kind of amplifies the isolation that people going through these challenges feel. So maybe I can share a bit about my own experience, right?
Yeah,
so
please do.
I think it's pretty similar to other people in Singapore and around the region. So for me, back then when I had really major depression, I actually tried to reach out for help by talking to my mom and my dad about it. I was like, hey guys, I think I'm depressed and I think I need to get help. Like, I think I need to get professional help. So I had the privilege of knowing a friend who had actually told me that he had gotten professional help before for depression, and with the help of medication he actually started getting better. So I was like, oh, okay, this is a smart person and he's very capable, so I think there's something right here. But it's so expensive. There's a high barrier to entry. In that depressed state, you're like, okay, my life is going really bad, I can't afford this, I really just need the support of external intervention, parents, to say like, okay, maybe I'll help you at this point. I was kind of in a state where I was just not doing well, emotionally, financially as well, and various other aspects. So when I reached out to them, the response I got was that my dad said, oh, you should just go sleep it off because that's what I do. The next day is a new day and you'll feel better and you'll be able to know what to do with the problem at hand. And I'm like, no, I've been sleeping all day and the thoughts are still there with me. And then with my mom, she was trying to problem solve. So she's like, okay, you feel bad right now and maybe it's because of all these factors. And I'm like, yeah, those things do make me sad, but I'm a lot sadder than I think I should be, So I had a friend who passed away around that time, and I was like, yeah, I'm sad, but to the point that I can't function, I can't get out of bed, I have no motivation for anything. It just didn't make sense anymore. So I was like, I really need to get your support to go help me get some treatment, right? And she was like, nah, let's go see a witch doctor. So she comes from a more like Malay background.
I see.
So we went to we would call it a bomo. So that's like a traditional witch doctor. And basically she was like, praying into some lime leaves and water. And it's supposed to wash away all the bad vibes, But no, it didn't work. So I think there's still a stigma really because there's a lack of understanding and education. I'm really hoping that, through our talks, we'll be able to help people understand it in a more accessible manner.
Thank you for sharing that. I think it's really hard for people to be like vulnerable and like tell their story. So I appreciate you opening up and letting me know about that. I think personally too, like I have people who have gone through like suicide or like depression, and we've had this open conversation about why there's such a stigma in Asia. And my friend brought up such a good point. She was like, oh, when someone has cancer, you can see it on like a scan. You can see your hair falling out because of the chemotherapy. You're like, oh, I feel for this person because this person has cancer. And then she was saying she like went through something as well. And she was like, these are my thoughts. I feel it all the time. I'm tired, I'm drained, but she's also like high functioning as well. So people think, oh, you're fine, sleep it off. Tomorrow's a new day, get over it. And it's really hard. I completely understand in that sense.
It's really hard. And I think one of my friends actually gave me a really good perspective on mental illness because his mom also has gone through something similar, and friends as well. He basically said that, hey, Sabrina, your brain is an organ as well. And just like any other organ, it can fall sick. So that was like, right, I get it now. My just not functioning right. And that was precisely why the medication actually worked.
Mm-hmm.
So after a few weeks, I saw that the medication did work. I was able to accept that what I was experiencing was in fact some sort of illness, right?
Mm-hmm.
And something that's biological. It can get better with the help of whatever my body is lacking.
Yeah, that's an interesting way of putting it too. I didn't even think about that, right? Because I think everyone just assumes like, oh, this person is crazy or something. But no, it's like your brain is a functioning part of your body, just like how your lungs are if you had like lung cancer, things like that. So in terms of normalizing or opening the dialogue with people around you, so you did that with your family, how did you kind of pivot their mind shift or their mind space? Because they're like, this is something that you can maybe get over in a week or a month or so, but kind of getting them to the point where it's like, this is actually something that's really dangerous or something that's really important that I get your help. How do you open that dialogue up to them?
So that was really hard for me. I guess 5 years ago when I was going through it.
Yeah.
And I think things have changed quite a bit since then.
Mm-hmm.
Just to put things into context.
Yeah.
So back then, suicide attempts or attempted suicide was illegal in Singapore. So they would actually arrest you and everything if you did that. It's been decriminalized 2 years ago. So back then, I felt really bad, and I actually reached out for help by telling my mom and dad, some friends. A couple of friends kind of understood, but I think when you're in that state, you don't really know how to help someone as well. It's really hard, It's honestly really difficult to support someone with depression if you don't have that awareness, right?
Yeah.
Because if you've never been through it before and come out of it in a better state, it's really, really difficult to empathize with someone going through depression, anxiety, or any other mental health condition. So back then, I guess I didn't really successfully communicate or open up the conversation with my close ones at a time. So in the end, what happened was that depression got so bad, I kind of wanted to give up. I didn't really want to kill myself. I just wanted to
You're just tired,
get out.
Right? Yeah.
I'm just tired. I just wanted to get out of this phase or this really dark space that I was in, and I just couldn't find any other way out because now it's biological, right? What could I have done? Only when I was arrested for attempted suicide. So luckily I was doing that in a public enough space. I wanted to jump because that was the lazy way of doing it, and some people actually saw me from afar and they called the police. And when I saw the police coming, I was like, oh, this is the worst way to go right now. I can't just jump. And I just okay, I just sat on the ledge. And then, just going through that whole experience, the fact that the police had come and I had been jailed and sent to the Institute of Mental Health, IMH, and, having gone through the whole ordeal, and then having them call my dad, because I didn't have my phone back then. I only had my dad and my mom's number. Only when they got notified after this whole process were they like, okay, Sabrina actually wanted to take her life.
Yeah.
And to the point that she has gotten herself into this whole thing.
Into jail.
Into jail and into hospital. So, for me, it was quite the field trip, looking back. But it was really sad for me realizing that it took all of that for them to finally understand that I need help. So there is a stigma, there is a lack of understanding for sure. Yeah. And that's why a lot of people, I think, just give up.
Yeah. But I think what you're doing now, you're basically paving the way. Because I know there are probably people younger generations or people our age or people older who maybe aren't as strong as you are and they don't know what to do. And maybe they are in a dark place and they actually do take their lives. So yeah, I think it's really great that you're leading this effort and creating this space that people can talk about it openly and not be afraid. In terms of, I think you were mentioning, how some people who are outsiders were oh my gosh, we know that you have depression or anxiety or things like that. It is hard. How do we support people? Right. What should we do? Or, I think you mentioned intervention as well. So I guess, just from your perspective, things that you would recommend.
So I guess how to be a better friend or loved one to someone who has, or be a better support person or system. Yeah, I see this a lot now. I've obviously had a couple of people come to me for advice or for help. So what I have found to be really, really helpful, for myself and for other people or my friends who are going through something similar, is that just really spending time with them. Spending time with them and listening to them is really important. A lot of the time when we're talking or when we're having just regular conversations, we listen to answer or we listen to solve a problem, right? But we don't just like listen fully and just sit with whatever the person has said. So I think one of the key things would be to listen attentively without judgment of what, you know, your depressed, sad or anxious friend is going through. Just listen to them and be able to, just try your best to understand where they're coming from. You don't have to problem solve. It's really about just listening. The other thing would be, I think something that's really, really important is to project emotional stability.
I see.
Yeah. So like you can't give when your glass is empty. You really need to be in a space where you can actually give and support someone. And a lot of the time when we're encountering like busy days or a lot of stress, you just don't have the headspace to do it. And that's okay. So I think whenever you are spending time with your friend or loved one, you have to be able to be in a good space where you can show that you can be their rock. So that's super important. And on the flip side, if you don't have that headspace or if you are not able to give at the moment, I think it's really important that you say in a gentle way that you can't be there for them right now because of all these things, but you really, really care and you want to support them. But I'll get back to you maybe tomorrow or in 2 days' time. Let's do that instead, So at least it also gives them something to look forward to and it reassures them that you care.
I think,
as opposed to like not replying.
Oh yeah, that's the worst.
Don't ghost your friend.
I think what you mentioned about, saying like maybe if I'm not in the right headspace, let's catch up in 2 days' time. I feel like it's being very intentional in that sense. Those are really great tips. And I think anyone listening should also take notes, kind of like digest it as well. I think this is a question that I haven't asked anyone actually, and maybe it's been asked multiple times, I'm not sure, but if you could talk to like a younger version of yourself, what would you tell her? And I think for me, the only reason why I ask is because I think she'd be really proud of you. To be honest, you've come so far. And yeah, I think that's such an important topic and people are just genuinely like afraid to talk about it. So what would you say to her?
Yeah. I would actually tell her that I don't know. I would just sit down with her and say, hey, so
you'll be great.
Everything will be fine. There'll be bad days, but things also get better overall. It's an upward trajectory. But I would talk to her about mental health and I would want to educate her about, mental health is really important. These are the ways you can take care of yourself and these are the signs I would teach her about the signs of depression, anxiety, how to get help, what help she should get, all of this. I would obviously tell her about, that her brain is just an organ and it does fall sick and that's okay and you can get help for that. I think beyond the whole medication science behind it, right, it's also a lot about personal development in the sense that I learned how to take care of myself better and to appreciate myself better. This is a whole like self-love thing, right? But I think the idea of like cultivating self-love has also been a big theme for me in the past few years. And allowing myself to be myself and accepting myself for who I am has been a big part of that journey as well. Because like depression and anxiety, it's triggered from stress, right? And that stress builds up when you're trying to live up to someone's or your own expectations or it's always self-imposed. I think a lot of it happens when there's a gap between your perception of yourself right now and your perception of the expectations that you have of yourself and of the people around you, right? But when you let go of all of that, you really kind of like come home to yourself and you're able to have that self-love and self-confidence that will kind of shield you from that kind of stress.
Yeah.
Eventually.
to kind of tailgate what you said too, so my friend, she told me to use this method where, like, for me, I get really anxious sometimes. I'm like, oh, like, what if this person thinks I'm not like smart enough, or like, what if I fail, or blah, 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 right? Or like, I come up with all these like assumptions in my head, and it just kind of doubles and amplifies. I'm like, oh my gosh, I think anything. And then she was like, oh, if that happens, you need to ask yourself, like, who said that? Did you hear it from someone's like mouth? Did someone ask you that? Like, why do you think this way? And I was like, oh, actually, no one said anything. Right? I'm like, oh, it's just in my head. Or I was the one kind of just amplifying it. So
yeah. So it's interesting that you said that. The whole idea of, oh, who said that? You know, where's that coming from? So during therapy, I actually learned about this. I think they call it the parts model. So you kind of sit down with the different parts of you that are present right now. The different parts can be like, say, if anxiety comes up, that's like your firefighter, because she's like, oh, let's fix this, okay? Let's fix this.
I love it.
Yeah, and then you're feeling like lonely right now and abandoned. Then it's maybe the little girl who maybe didn't feel loved at some point in her life. And so she comes out. The idea is that you kind of sit with the various parts that are in the room right now and have a little dialogue with them. And yeah, you can ask them like, hey, you know, why do you feel that way? And what can I do to make you feel better? In doing that, you kind of like self-soothe. Yeah, you're kind of just like fixing your own problem in a way, right?
Yeah.
So you're like the calm, clear adult version of yourself. And you're looking at the different parts.
Yeah.
Where you're like, okay, little girl, why do you feel so sad? Oh, because your friend didn't call you back. Okay, that sucks. But maybe that friend of yours was actually busy. Maybe his or her phone died and he or she can't call you back. But can you try reaching out to her again in a week's time? Yes, you can. So, okay, do you feel better now? All right, you know, let's move on to the next one. Yeah, I really appreciated how in therapy we had that kind of approach. And have that approach to kind of speak to the different parts of you and just curiously look into why you're feeling a certain way.
Yeah, that's a great method because it puts you in a place of like control. Like you are responsible. You feel like you're the one kind of fixing things when maybe you felt just confused or like anxious, and it's more like you're putting yourself, okay, I'm going to fix these parts of my life. Or so I think everything that you've just talked about and opened your heart to me, I really appreciate it. I think it's so great. In terms of where you hope to see Asia take on mental health issues, like where do you kind of want to see that going within like the next 5 to 10 years in an ideal world?
You know, in an ideal world, we would all be able to talk about just mental health openly, right? And get the help that we need. So I guess the vision that we have for Calm Collective kind of is aligned to that. So the reason why we are hosting all these talks is really to normalize the conversation around mental health so that we can really give people the confidence to seek the help that they need.
Yeah.
You know, we believe that there's a lot of people that are probably living life and probably suffering to some extent because they're either undiagnosed or they're just simply not reaching out to the right help, right? So there's a lot of ways that people can get help. I really hope that in the next 5-10 years, schools in Asia would be able to actually embrace mental health or even like the concept of empathy. It starts from empathy, really. Embrace this concept and formally introduce these ideas and these teachings within the school system. So I hope that the kids of the future will be able to understand this. And I also hope that our generation and the generations above will be able to just accept and embrace these concepts.
Yeah, that's great. And now that you have these talks about it, where you're inviting people to talk on your platform and have these open discussions, I think it's the right space and the right mentality. So we'll see more and more people be aware of it and understand it better. So I really appreciate you pushing for this movement because it's also important to me in that sense.
Actually, I wanted to add one more thing.
Go ahead.
On that note, if you want to talk about like Asian in particular, so there's another thing about the Asian male stereotype and how he has to be the straight and strong breadwinner and he shouldn't be showing his feelings or any vulnerability. So I really, really hope for a world where men too can be emotional, show their heart on their sleeves, right? So I really hope that we'll be able to accept that in the next 5 years or 10 years at least. Yeah, it's really hard for guys as well. So we also did we've done a men's mental health talk, and we're hoping to turn this into a series to really encourage this.
I think that's a great point, honestly. I think I saw it on your website as well. It was like 4 men talking about like their feelings and like, the stigma around it. So I think that's such a great series, because I also have guy friends who will come to me and talk to me about certain things that they would never talk to their guy friends about. And I'm like, but why does it have to be this way, right? So
exactly.
Yeah, please do continue having those series, and I will definitely join your next one. I think the next one, you guys have one scheduled?
So right now we have one scheduled for the men's one. We're actually going to have that one on the 11th of November.
Okay.
But for the rest of October, we have like a meditation talk, and we have another one on adulting and the time of COVID. So this is for the youth.
Nice.
So this whole enforced closeness, living and working from home, finding it difficult to find a job right now, and letting go of expectations of your dream career and all of that. It's going to be, all these important issues that are on the minds of youth these days we're going to be talking about soon.
Yeah, I can link all of these also in the article. So if anyone wants to watch these webinars, I guarantee they'll be great. Because even just after talking to Sabrina, I'm like, wow, so you must have to watch them. I'll link them in the article. Thank you so much for your time. I appreciate it so much, Sabrina. Again, want to reiterate like the importance of like what you're doing, and it still amazes me. I'm like, man, this girl's a DJ, also like working a full-time job, doing Calm Collective Asia, like so.
And I sleep 8 hours.
What? That's awesome.
Yeah.
But yeah,
sleeping is important. Yeah.
Awesome.
It's important for mental health.
Yeah, no, that's great. But
yes.
Thanks, Sabrina.
Alrighty.